Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Chuck Casey, welcome back to the Center of the Universe.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
The last time you were on was with Jeremy Bowling and John Hollis, and you guys hopped on. I think you were notified like maybe an hour and a half before we started recording, and you guys were like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." By the way, to my kids, if you're listening to this, that's the way to be. Jump in. If you have an opportunity, you're not sure about it, jump in anyway. Worst thing that happens is you fail and learn something from it.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. I like that. Yep.
All right. So when I talked to the three of you, you guys had just experienced a trip that we don't have to go over in detail what that trip was about. But it was a powerful trip taking veterans back overseas to where they had experienced, the adjective is going to fall short here, but significant, meaningful, life-altering sort of combat experience. And that trip was, by many accounts, if not all accounts, was very, very healing for those who participated, the family members and the others who came. And you guys, I think, were collectively so moved, you decided to start a nonprofit. Right.
That's right, Paul.
And I've asked John and Jeremy recently about, hey, where do you guys stand? But I'd love to get your perspective on that nonprofit before we jump into the story of Chuck Casey.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Paul. So you hit the nail on the head. Just this type of reconciliation work and just the human element, the human power of it is incredibly moving. And so the intent is just to try to formalize it a little bit more. And also just there's so many people out there and so many opportunities to do this work that hopefully by just formalizing a little bit more, just puts a little bit more structure and formality to it, so we can do a little bit more respectfully and more effectively. So yeah,
and at the end we'll make sure that we say the name of the nonprofit and how folks can find out more about it, how they can contribute to the mission that you guys have established. But I'm inspired by all that, and I think I've told you, the three of you, that hey, whatever I need to do, just tell me, point me in that direction, and I'll do my best. All right, so Chuck, this is fun. You're a Marine. I'm an Army dude. I tell people a lot that I rarely talk trash about Marine Corps guys. I can't say that about Navy and Air Force, and I have family members that touch all of the branches. And so Navy and Air Force guys, if you're offended, I don't care that much. But I love Marines. Marines are willing to do hard things, even if you end up being whatever your job is post basic and the infantry training, the hard training you go through. Everybody goes through the crucible, right? There is, like, you have to prove yourself as a warrior. And whether you end up cooking or you're an infantry guy or a helicopter pilot, you had to go through some tough stuff. And you're in austere environments for most of your career. And you did 25 years in the Marine Corps. And there aren't many people that I know that spent that much time being a Marine. It is a mindset. And I look, Chuck, let's start here. How old were you when you joined the Marine Corps?
So I'm going to back it up. So the comments about the Air Force, I actually enlisted in the Air Force out of high school. So I'm a unicorn, Paul. I really charted my own course the entire way. So 25 years in uniform. I enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school in '99. So enlisted Air Force for a couple of years. Went through the Air Force Academy, and then when it came time to graduate the Air Force Academy, crossed into the Marine Corps back in 2005. So,
hold on,
yeah.
Chuck. By the way, I walked right into that one. I had no idea.
That's all good.
So you enlisted. You did some active duty time as an enlisted guy.
Yeah.
Then you did, I think the Army calls it the Mustang program. You enlisted in the West, right? Something similar to that for the Air Force Academy. Then you're commissioned as an Air Force officer, it sounds like.
Actually, the way that it worked was normally if you would cross commission, you would go through the services commissioning program like the summer of your junior year. So that when you graduate, you go right into that service. I missed the bus. And so when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, I basically got, administratively discharged. So you take a little bit of a risk in case things don't work out for Marine Corps OCS. But fortunately they did. So I went to OCS that summer. And then when I graduated OCS, commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps.
So Chuck, obviously I'm kidding about the Air Force and Navy thing. I like to talk a little trash. You are a unicorn. Like I don't think I'll ever, I certainly have not met somebody who has that path that you just described. And I don't think I'll ever meet anybody again that's followed that path. What was it about the Marine Corps versus say the Army, Navy, versus the other branches?
Yeah. Well, the unicorn thing is interesting, Paul. I would say when I talk to younger people who are interested in joining the military, I encourage them to talk to as many people as they can, because you do start seeing a trend. And the trend is most people go in with a certain job, right? Something that they a contract or a career field they'll do. But if people stay in long enough, different career options ends up opening up, and you do end up hearing all these kind of interesting stories, right? So I would say that for me, Paul, it was probably a couple things, right? First and foremost, I was hoping to fly, but they didn't tell me I was unqualified to fly in the Air Force until my senior year. So by that point, it was too late to go back. And there was a chance to be an aviator in the Marine Corps, at least a backseater. My issue was depth perception. But it was a little more than that too, Paul, right? This was back in the mid 2000s, right? The post 9/11 era. And there was a side of me that just wanted to kind of take the next challenge, right? In that era. So it was kind of all the above. And I guess the final thing too was back to your Navy comment. I'm a unicorn, man. While I was at the Air Force Academy, I did a semester exchange at the Naval Academy. And I tell you a funny story, man. So my first week there at the academy, they have a few enlisted Marines that are basically just kind of midshipman advisors. And again, I was just kind of going through this point in life, like what do I want to do? What are my options? And there's two Marine Corps experiences I had there. One of them was the first week I was there, a gunnery sergeant was, I don't know why he was on a ladder, but he was on a ladder and he fell off. And so he's laying on the ground, just kind of mangled, and all the midshipmen were in shock. He should have been in shock, but the midshipmen were. And in this moment of calmness, he just goes to one of the midshipmen. He goes, "Hey, stud, how about you elevate my legs before I go into shock?" And I just remember thinking, like I don't know who these guys are, but like that's kind of cool. And then the second thing was, twice a year they would do the fitness tests for the midshipmen, which is like some of the mids stress out about it's running or whatever else. And they would go in waves, like every hour, a different group of midshipmen would go. And all of the Marines who were assigned to the academy would form up in a line in the back and basically just chase, the people who were having a tough time. And they ran it every single hour the entire day. And so I just remember thinking, like whoever these guys are, there's something cool in this organization. And so, yeah, when it came time a year later to look at my career options, when I found out I couldn't fly for the Air Force, I think that made a mark on me. So
you touched three of the big four. I don't mean to exclude the Coast Guard here, but the big four. Wow, you got an experience with three of those, and that's you've definitely achieved. Is there something beyond unicorn status? Maybe.
I don't know. I spent 6 years living in Vietnam, working at the embassy over there, so I don't know how that works. And that was in uniform. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
6 years is a long time to be at an embassy, right?
Yeah. Again, unicorn, Paul. A few different assignments, but over 3 different assignments. Lived in Vietnam for 6 years. So,
yeah, it's wild. All right, let's start at the beginning, and we're definitely going to talk about more of your military experience. Because how long have you been? Well, let me understand how long you've been out. When was the last?
My formal retirement date was last March 1st. So 11 and a half months I've been out.
Oh, so you're freshly out.
Yeah. It's all new hair here. Yep.
Yeah, so you haven't had a haircut in a while.
You just got a cut, man.
Yeah. Looks good, but you couldn't have done that in the Corps.
What's funny is I never knew that I had curly hair because the last time I had hair was 1999. So as it started growing out, I didn't know
wild.
What to do with it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, more than a quarter century ago. That's crazy.
That's right.
All right, what part of the country did you grow up in?
Yeah, born in southern Maine and then grew up in northeast Massachusetts. So I'm a northeast guy.
So northeast is not super close to Boston, so you wouldn't consider yourself a Boston guy.
Nah, I'm guilty of saying it to make it easier, but anyone from up there will catch me. So,
I mean, I hate to do this, but it's almost involuntary for me at this point. Everybody I meet from Massachusetts, even if they're from like far western Mass,
yeah.
I have to ask, were you ever around mass holes growing up?
I was an asshole. Still am.
I was trying to lightly get into it to see how you answered that first question. Well, can you describe for folks who've maybe never been to Massachusetts or never spent more than 10 minutes around someone from Mass what a mass hole is?
The Northeast is very fast paced, and I don't know, we got a bit of an edge to us, and so if someone gives you a little heat, you instinctively give a little back plus one, which is normal to us. But if you're not from the area, that could seem a little bit maybe a little aggressive.
Yeah, there's something about Mass, New York, especially the city. It really the city and maybe the metro area for New York, and then northern Jersey, and then Philly. Yeah. Those four places, it's absolutely come back as hard as you just received, and then at least a +1, right?
That's right. You gotta give it a little +1. Yeah. When I was younger, Paul, I was skinny, man. I was beanpole, and just you gotta figure out how to stand your own and get out of situations, and you don't back down. I mean, that is part of kind of the Northeast identity, right? So yeah, you grow up with a little edge to you.
Yeah, and even if you get your butt kicked, at least you attempted to stand up for yourself. If you just back off immediately, right, you're in trouble for a long
That's
long
right,
time.
Man. For a long time. That's right.
So what were you into as a kid, like before high school?
I was a skater, dude. I spent my entire youth on a skateboard or a snowboard or a wakeboard. I was a drummer, a heavy metal drummer. So,
come on, man.
Yeah.
So was your identity more skateboard than it? Well, I'm trying to think through Did you say wakeboard?
Yeah.
Wakeboarding, snowboarding, and skateboarding. Yeah. They're all very similar endeavors. I guess you're on snow, you're on asphalt, and you're on water. What was it about those three? Because obviously they're not quite the same, but very similar. What was it about that you really enjoyed so much?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I like growing up in the 80s and early 90s, these sports were kind of just coming online, right? Like I mean, skateboarding, I think, kind of formally started in the 70s, but it was just it was a cool time, man. Some of it probably goes back to the MTV generation, right? Like Tom Petty's Free Falling video where the girl's on the half pipe, at the end of it. And I don't know if some of that stuff's makes an impact on you, but it was just kind of cool. I think about this now because my younger kids are 5 and 10, and they're kind of enjoy playing around the skate park and stuff. And I talk about how cool it was in the 80s and 90s as these sports were coming along. As I don't know, the sports were kind of coming to their own, and X Games was coming online, and just I don't know, it's kind of an exciting time to be a part of it. But I don't know, Paul. I didn't really gravitate towards team sports. We weren't really a team sports family growing up. I was a little more independent, right? I was probably drawn to some of that. So,
did that affect you in the Marine Corps in any fun ways? Being an individual guy, trying to fit into a team world.
No, I don't know. I think the other thing, Paul, is even though I was a skater dude growing up, I was also always just kind of friends with everybody, right? I was in some of the advanced classes growing up. So I don't know. I was friends with all the people who got the real good grades in school, which I did not. My best friend growing up was a football guy. I don't know. It's kind of just friends with everybody, and so I think that more than anything, Paul, actually just being able to relate to everybody, and also just realizing that everybody has different strengths. Everyone's cool in their own way. Everyone kind of struggles with things in their own way, but you bring that all together, and the strength of that together is what makes a good team. I think that actually, and I will say one thing about skateboarding is, I mean, when you're jumping over a staircase and you get it wrong and you get a face full of concrete, it does have a way to toughen you up a little bit. So I don't know. Yeah, it probably did all come together somehow, right?
How many bones have you broken doing the skateboarding?
Miraculously, no broken bones. A lot of road rash, but miraculously, no broken bones. So
all original teeth.
Yeah, all original teeth, man. Yeah.
Wow, because I have to admit I can get stuck for a few minutes watching skateboarders just crash. I cringe for a lot of it. It seems brutal, but you had no fear of biting it.
No, I don't think I knew any better, man. Kind of like going in the Marine Corps. I think I was too dumb to realize it was a bad idea.
Yeah, and so what year did you graduate high school?
99.
So yeah, that was X Games were starting to become a really big thing. I could see the draw to that for sure.
Yeah.
And you were lucky you were able to do that sort of thing on 3 different surfaces too: wakeboarding, snowboarding, and skateboarding. And there's a lifestyle to the skateboarding too, right? You're either sort of mellow, kind of kid, or you're like, let's mix it up and get crazy kind of kid? Were you both or one or the other?
Probably both, Paul, right? That's kind of like the analogy when people talk about the Marine Corps. They say like, oh, there's two kinds of Marines, the super polished guy and his blues at the ball, and then the crazy one in the after hours. And it turns out the same guy, right? I don't know. Probably both.
All right. I did not miss the fact that you said you were a heavy metal drummer. Let's start with best or your favorite heavy metal band of all time.
Oh, Megadeth, man. I'm a huge Megadeth fan.
What wasn't I cannot remember the lead singer, Dave Mustaine. Wasn't he part of Metallica?
He was, yeah.
And they had a rift, I think.
Yeah, you know, you got to be into some crazy stuff if you get kicked out of Metallica in the early '80s, but it was a bit much. So,
yeah,
but I think metal fans won. We got two great bands out of it. So,
yeah, Megadeth was, and I don't know if they're still around or not. Did they play? I think they're still together.
They are. Yeah, they still play. Yep.
Yeah,
I think there's some personnel changes over the years for various reasons, but yeah.
But Dave's still the front man, right?
Yeah. Yep.
They're speed metal.
Yeah, kind of a technical speed metal. Dave Mustaine is a classically trained guitarist, so it's for non-metal enthusiasts, it just sounds like a bunch of noise. But he's incredibly talented as a guitarist and incredibly insightful as a lyricist. It's if you go back and listen to some of their '80s stuff, the song "Holy Wars" from 1986, I think. 40 years later, there's some parallels between what happens today and in certain parts of the world in that song. So.
No, Dave, I think at least recently is recognized pretty widely as a very smart guy, very talented guy. But some of I call it speed metal, and I don't mean to be offensive to anybody when I say that, but that's how they were labeled for a really long time.
Yeah.
What he's doing, that sounds like he's just doing erratic things really fast. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh yeah. He's a favorite. I love the whole band. So. Yeah.
So when you think about drumming for heavy metal, is it frenetic? Is it heavy? Is it both of those things? And if it's those two things, what else is it?
Yeah, it's actually not as heavy, Paul. I mean, some guys do, but it's more. It's incredibly intricate, and I like being a drummer, Paul. My mind works very, very fast. I was talking before about being a Massel from the Northeast, and everything's very fast paced up there. But my mind works very, very fast. It thinks faster than I can talk sometimes. And so when I drum, it's interesting because I didn't realize this until recently, but when I saw a video of myself drumming, but I actually go into almost a bit of a trance. I mean, you really kind of get into the rhythm and you feel it much more than you think about it. So
why drumming versus other instruments?
That's a great question. I remember in second grade, I wanted to play the trumpet first. And so the teacher had the mouthpieces for all the instruments. So the mouthpiece for a trumpet or a saxophone or whatever else. And I couldn't figure out how to make a sound out of the trumpet. And I couldn't figure out how to make a sound out of the reeded instruments. And so, and I knew I wanted to play something. So at the very end, he goes, well, can you do this? Bump, 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 bump. And I did. And he did a few more. And just for whatever reason, in the second grade, whatever little beats he would play, I would repeat on the spot. So there it is.
Started in second grade. That's wild to me. I can tell you as a sixth grader, because that's when I got into music. Reed instruments don't make any sense to me. I don't know how you make beautiful music out of a reed instrument. Trumpets, I understand the concept, but it seems really, really hard as well. Yeah. But look, drumming is no less hard than those instruments. It's just a different kind of thing. Yeah. Are you able? I've seen some videos, social media, that sort of thing, where guys that have been in famous bands as the drummer for the band for most of the time the band's been together, they can hear a track without drums, and then they can it won't be the same drum line that actually was part of that song, but they can come up with something as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
You can, Paul, but with drumming, it's so much more about just the rhythm. And so 99% of music out there, almost 100% of the radio is a straight 4/4 beat. So 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2, and then it repeats. And so if you have that rhythm, then you can all of a sudden start playing with all kinds of different fills and simple plays and double bass and all kinds of other things, and just bring it back to that 4/4. And it's kind of funny because some musicians like that. I love listening to Chili Peppers, Red Hot Chili Peppers, the way that they play the way they practice is they go into to some sort of a jam room and just start doing that. And each person, Flea takes a walk for a bass and Chad takes a walk for a drum. And then after they go back and listen to something and say, those parts are pretty cool. I love that. My drumming style does not work well for people who just want like very traditional kind of sounds out of their music. So
best drumming in a song that you've ever heard, heavy metal or otherwise?
Yeah. My favorite is Pantera. I love what Vinny used to do on the drums. It was just so that dude was. You asked a question before about loud or technical. That dude was loud and technical, and I loved it. It was so different. It was those formative years, right? The early teenage years. It's different. It's something your parents weren't really listening to. You probably get in trouble if you were caught listening to it. And it was so loud and aggressive and tight. I loved it. I loved listening to it.
How many mosh pits have you been in?
Enough.
I'm a bit older than you, but I think I was at the beginning of mosh pits when I was much younger. And Pantera's, man, they are something. You and I could probably talk for a long time about that kind of music back in the day. But I didn't listen to it exclusively, that sort of music, but I did listen to a lot of it.
Yeah. That's fun.
When you're a younger guy and you have a ton of testosterone, that music is very appealing.
That's right, man. Yep.
Are you still playing the drums?
I would love to play the drums. We live in the suburbs in Virginia now, and there's just not enough space for a drum set. And so I finally amassed the dream drum set that I love. I mean, just a gorgeous set, gorgeous hardware and cymbals everywhere. And we moved back here from Vietnam. And it was sitting in the shed, which is horrible for instruments. And so after 2 years of that, I ended up donating it to my kids' elementary school. So I went up there just crying as I dropped it off. But it's the funniest thing because music teachers, they don't have any kind of a budget, right? And they're just doing important things with the kids. And so there's absolutely a bit of like a Jack Black School of Rock situation going on where these kids are up there with their recorders, whatever else, and in the background have this gorgeous Yamaha drum set with Gibraltar stands. It's awesome. So
I wish we knew each other before you donated. You could keep it here and then just come down and whatever you wanted.
I don't think my daughter would let it, man. She's 5, but she's feisty, so she talks all the time about how that's her drum set, and yeah.
Well, yeah, you kind of donated to her.
That's right.
At least in part.
So it's at the school, but it's still her drum set.
So drumming and skateboarding through high school, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Probably not going to do a lot of that at the Air Force Academy.
No, none of that.
Did you enjoy your experience at the Air Force Academy? And I'm not trying to offend the Air Force Academy or anything like that, but I have to say, and I'm stuttering a little bit here because I'm thrown by the fact that you didn't know or weren't told that there was a depth perception concern until your senior year. Somebody should have told you that your freshman year.
Yeah. So I probably should have known all along, right? I mean, that's probably why I didn't play team sports. If you throw a football at me, it's embarrassing watching me try to catch it, or if I try to park a car. If I look back on life, I probably should have known all along. But when you're growing up, you don't think about things. You just live, right? So what they do when you first, at least years ago, when you went to the service academy, is when you first come in, they do a basic exam, right? Just I don't know, your basic eye chart exam or whatever else. And I think I don't want to push any buttons here. The Air Force is very good to me. My perception is that they probably wait until your senior year to do an in-depth flight exam, because if someone like me knew that their freshman year they weren't qualified, I probably would have left. The way it works at the academy is if you leave before your junior year, no harm, no foul, no reimbursement. If you leave after your junior year, you either need to serve or you need to pay back the education. And back to your question, Paul. I was not a natural cadet. I probably wanted to quit every single day that I was there for 4 years. It was a struggle, and I'm super glad that I made it through. And I wouldn't give that experience back for anything. But it was challenging, probably in every single way for me.
Well, you had mentioned that you weren't necessarily like the highest GPA sort of kid in high school, but not everybody gets into the Air Force Academy. So you had good enough academic achievement before you got in there.
Yeah, it was good enough. So objectively on paper, I would not have been qualified to get in out of high school. I shouldn't say I would have been qualified, but just the standard of people that go there out of high school is so high, Paul. I remember being there, and I'll come back to that point because I was enlisted, Paul. You're talking about the Mustang programs before. They have a different quota and a different. They're looking for different things from people who are enlisted if they want to go over there. And so when I did enlist, I really kind of found my niche and did pretty well my first couple of years. But when I got to the Air Force Academy, I don't think I truly appreciated what I was in for, Paul. When I got there, I was just shocked at the number of cadets who were, 4 million GPA students and multiple sports captains and Eagle Scouts and just phenomenal human beings. And it was I was incredibly humbled by it when I first got there / intimidated. But what I love when I look back on it is when you surround yourself by people that are, I don't want to say better than you, right? No human being is really better than anyone, but just but who are achieving in such different ways. I don't know. It was awesome, Paul. I mean, they really lifted me up in different ways. And then I think also just having a prior enlisted experience and mindset helped offer them something as well, right? So, yeah.
No, it's smart to put a lot of really smart, capable, talented folks together, but it's also good to ground them, at least indirectly, through real world experience.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't know, Paul. I mean, the way I grew up, I started, so in addition to skateboarding and drumming, I started working when I was pretty young too, probably 13 or 14 years old. And so I grew up pretty independent. By the time I was a late teenager, I was mostly supporting myself. And a lot of my classmates from the academy had just had different experiences growing up, right? And so when I enlisted in the Air Force, I had my own apartment, right? I had my own independent life. And that part of it was hard going to the academy as well, because you take a bit of a step back. Not only was I independent when I was enlisted, but I've been independent in my teenage years as well. And so all of a sudden you go into such a structured environment, the academy. But at the same time, just having those experiences, they probably did help other people who were making that adjustment from more of a traditional kind of home life, into their next chapter. So yeah, somehow it all came together, and we had an awesome group of people that I was around. So yeah.
Did you leave base a lot when you were out there?
You don't get to leave a ton, especially your freshman year. And again, that was tough for me just psychologically that first year after being so independent for so many years. You're really kind of stuck on base, both because that's kind of the rules. And then also it's just the Air Force Academy is kind of isolated. It's on the edge of Colorado Springs. And so even to get from your dorm building, if you were to walk, and you can't have a car till your junior year, but if you were to walk to a car, you got to walk a mile to the parking lot and then drive 20 miles off base to get anywhere. And by the way, you're making at the time like $60 a month. So yeah, not a ton of going off base, especially the first couple of years.
Was there enough to do on base that you weren't completely out of your mind bored?
Not well. Boredom was never the issue, Paul. I was just absolutely overwhelmed with the rigor of the program because it's academics, right? If I understand right, most universities, a 15-hour course load would be anything above that at a lot of schools requires like special approval. At the academies, it's the minimum, right? That's the minimum course load. Even if you're I came in thinking I was going to be an electrical engineer because another hobby in high school was I used to wire car stereos, and I'd done avionics in the Air Force. That's how that fed in. So I thought I had a strong electronics background understanding. I ended up becoming a management major because the academic program was so intense. So even as a management major, everyone has to take astronautical engineering and aeronautical engineering and all these different courses. And there's the athletics. Every cadet is expected to participate in athletics. And there's the military, responsibilities that you're supposed to execute. So it was just, but boredom was never the problem. It was really just getting through it all more than anything.
Yeah, let me ask the question differently. And I'm glad you corrected me on boredom, because I knew that the academies do a very good job of challenging you in almost every waking hour.
Absolutely.
In the rare moments that you could do whatever you wanted, where you didn't have to worry about the academics the next day or whatever the military requirements were later that day, was there any form of decent entertainment? And I'm asking that in the context of a military setting.
Yeah. So on the academy itself, not really, right. But Colorado Springs was a great town. And then we were an hour south of Denver. And then for me, snowboarding. So I was able to do some snowboarding when I was there as well and get to the mountains. So
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and snowboarding in the West is different than it is on the East Coast, right?
That's right, man. Yeah. A lot of East Coast riders end up being really great in the West Coast because you're not afraid of anything. There's no ice. So
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to fall down in powder. Okay.
yeah,
great.
it was awesome. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the Marine Corps time. So you end up, and you said you had to go through Marine OCS.
Yeah, I ended up going through, that would have been my third form of basic training. So yeah, Marine Corps OCS in the summertime. Yeah.
Yeah. And was that one summer or was that a couple summers?
Mine was one. There's a few different Marine Corps commissioning programs, but for the prior enlisted people in general, they group you into an OCS program that's 6 weeks in the summertime. So the majority of those, almost all of my peers were, prior enlisted Marines, but they grouped me into that as well.
Did you stand out as an Air Force guy, or did the people not care, or did they not know?
No, there was two of us, me and my good friend from the Air Force Academy, and we absolutely got a lot of special attention. So,
from your peers or from the guys running OCS, or both?
No, not from the peers. The peers, everyone's just trying to survive, right? No, from the drill instructors. Yeah, they had our number from day one. So.
All right, so you, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I'd love to hear you describe it because I've never gone through Marine Corps OCS and certainly never been commissioned as a Marine. What's the process once you are commissioned, and maybe you find out before you're actually commissioned? What's the process to go into a specialty?
Yeah, so you pass through OCS, you get commissioned, and then back to your opening comments, Paul. You're absolutely right. Every Marine, enlisted Marine goes through certain training. The mindset is every Marine is a rifleman. And that's still very much the ethos of the Marine Corps. And every officer is a provisional rifle platoon commander. So every lieutenant, after getting commissioned, goes through the basic school. We call it TBS, very, very creative acronym, down in Quantico, Virginia. And yeah, it's 6 months, Paul. It's 6 months of basic provisional rifle platoon commander leadership skills, but also exposure to all the different career fields in the Marine Corps. You would get exposure to all the different weapons you might fire, all the different scenarios you might get exposed to. So yeah, 6 months of training, and then also just it's also an evaluation, Paul. I mean, you're being evaluated every minute of the way. The Marine Corps, and I really value this about the organization. The Marine Corps takes its leadership very, very, very seriously. Just America really entrusts its youth in the hands of Marine Corps officers, and so there's a lot of scrutiny on if you truly have what it takes to be able to lead Marines. And so it's absolutely an evaluation. It's a physical evaluation. It's a mental evaluation. It's a performance under stress evaluation. But to answer your question, Paul, so somewhere through that pipeline, I don't know, probably maybe 4 months into it, you're able to kind of rack and stack what your preferences are for assignments, for career fields. And I forget, at the time, I think maybe there's 21 different career fields you could go into. So infantry, artillery, combat engineer, admin, aircraft maintenance, like I went into, pilot. But the way the Marine Corps does it, and this is a bit different for the services, but again, I've grown to appreciate it, is they break it into thirds for a bit of quality spread. So they'll break the class into thirds, and then the first person from the first third might get their first pick. The first person from the second third might get their first pick. First person from the third bird. So in theory, you could be in the top third of performers for your class. If you're at the bottom of that top third, you could get your last pick. But the intent is to try to get a quality spread of officers across all the MOSs. So,
yeah, that is an interesting approach. Yeah. Do you want to, like, whatever the most popular career field is, you don't want all of your best and brightest in that. I get that.
Yeah.
Wow. If you're the bottom guy in the top third.
Yeah.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah. But what's cool though, Paul, is I really enjoyed, I enjoyed my time in the Air Force. I'm pretty proud of the work I did, and hopefully I left a little bit better than when I got there. But I've really grown to be proud of the Marine Corps institution, Paul. We all make the same jokes. We take pride in being career leaders and those kinds of things. But the mindset of people going to the Marine Corps, Paul, is just different. The truth is, when people go in the Marine Corps, they truly go in to be Marines. and to do the best they can do and to serve, where they're put, where they're asked to go. And so I don't remember any instances, maybe there were, I just don't remember it. But I don't remember instances of people kind of jockeying and being like looking at test scores and being like, oh, I'm in the bottom third, so maybe I'll fail this next test. It's just not, it's not the mindset. And again, it's a constant evaluation of who you are. And so if there are perceptions of that behavior, I mean, there's peer reviews or supervisor reviews, that kind of mindset gets rooted out, right? And so I just remember it being a non-issue, Paul. I didn't go in the Marine Corps to be a maintenance officer. I definitely didn't. But at the time, I think when the options came around, I don't know, maybe that changed. I don't remember what my ranking preferences were, but my mentality truly was, wherever they need me to go, I'll go, whether it's what job or what assignment or what location. So.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, I think what you're describing is a model. You want an organization to be like that, but I think the Marine Corps attracts people with that mindset. Like, hey, whatever the needs are of the larger organization, absolutely, I'll take care of it. I think they do a nice job throughout their training to make sure people understand that that's the expectation and that's the culture as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to be part of this organization for very long.
Yeah, I think so, Paul. It's something I've become pretty proud of. And when you're there and you're going through it, I mean, you're just trying to get through the day, man, right? Like, you don't know that that's any different than anywhere else. But yeah, as I've gotten older and now that I'm part of other organizations beyond the military, I do, Paul. I realize that's a pretty special part of the culture. It's an important and special part of the culture, and it makes it very unique and something I'm very proud of.
By the way, to your point around TBS, I love the fact that Marine Corps is very functional in their naming, as they should be. Because if you're not, what's the point? You don't get any credit for flourish. I mean, congratulations, you confuse people. Like, yeah, please, tell me what you are in plain language.
After all these years, it's still my favorite acronym, the basic school, TBS. It doesn't get any more basic than that, man.
I mean, but everybody appreciates this because they understand. There's no question. All right, so you're a maintenance officer, and was it for aircraft?
It was, yeah. So in the Marine Corps, I did fixed wing aviation. So my first squadron was an F-18 squadron down in Beaufort, South Carolina, which was just a cool platform that the taxpayer definitely wanted in the F-18 program, and just a cool experience, Paul. Just an absolute kind of work hard, play hard kind of experience being in a fighter squadron. We did a couple of deployments to Asia, which is kind of how I got my start in the international affairs world. And it was a cool experience.
Do you like every pilot you've ever run into?
I like almost everybody I've ever ran into. I don't know. My wife, who just walked out the door, accuses me sometimes because I'll introduce someone like, "Oh, this is Paul. He's a good dude," and she goes, "You say everybody's a good dude." Once in about every 200 people, I'll say, "Oh, this is Steve." She goes, "Not a good dude," and I don't know. I don't realize I do it, but I get along with everyone. I don't know.
Yeah, I get along with everyone as well, but pilots, I've met some pilots that are wonderfully down to earth, and I've met some pilots like there's nobody. The way you view yourself, that doesn't exist. Like you're not that special, dude.
Yeah, I don't know, Paul. What a pilot has to do. So I was able to get my pilot's license when I was at the Air Force Academy, and the truth is, it's probably a really good thing I wasn't pilot qualified because it turns out I'm not a natural aviator. We all think we're gonna be like Maverick, And I remember coming for a landing one time. It's the stupidest thing, but when you're coming for a landing, you line up for runway 08. And I could never remember if that meant that like I need to be facing 80 degrees or if 80 degrees is behind me. And so I'm coming for a landing at Colorado Springs Airport. All of a sudden, the air traffic control guy just starts yelling at me like you're going the wrong way. Like there's a plane coming at you. And so it's just cemented on my mind, Paul. I mean, point taken what you're saying, and I'll jestfully say that. But when you're an aviator in the military, and especially in like the fighter community, the aircraft is always getting upgraded. So you always have to learn new things about the aircraft itself. There's new technical directors that get incorporated. There's new upgrades to the aircraft. So you're always learning these new parameters for the aircraft and how to fly within those parameters. There's always new tactics. There's always new threats. I mean, you're constantly learning. And the day that you don't keep learning like that, you're done. You're not relevant in the community. So you kind of have to develop this confidence. And it's a well-earned confidence. And also just if you're in the fighter community, you're up there, I mean, frankly, on your own. So I don't know. I sympathize with all that. I appreciate all of it. And you're right. I mean, I don't know, but I kind of enjoy it.
No, I'm not trying to be right. I'm just trying to jest a little bit.
Yeah.
And you have a more direct experience than I do. What pilots do is really hard stuff, and maybe to the point, you have to stay relevant by constantly learning, and there's a ton to learn. And people probably don't understand how hard it is to keep up with all that. No. You actually have to love learning, and you have to love the idea of doing hard and dangerous things. And so, yeah, in all seriousness, I don't take anything away from pilots. My brother-in-law's a pilot, which is mostly where that jesting comes from.
That's right, man. Yeah, it's your brother-in-law. You gotta give him a little bit.
I would never be completely sincere with him ever. Yeah. It's all good. So, were you a maintenance officer the entire time you were in the Corps?
So let's see. So Marine Corps, I ended up doing 19 years in the Marine Corps, which I still can't believe that was never supposed to be a thing. So let's see. So I did aircraft maintenance for the first 5 years, and then in 2010, I applied for a random program I found called the Foreign Area Officer Program, the FAO Officer, which is basically a small pool of international affairs officers. Which ended up being a really cool program. So I got in that in 2010. The first 3 years is basically a study program where you get a graduate degree, then you learn a language, and then you go into the region and really understand, kind of complement the book learning with what's happening on the ground, which was phenomenal. Every Marine's a rifleman, every Marine officer is a rifle platoon commander. So after 3 years of that, I came back to the fleet, did aircraft maintenance for one more tour out in Arizona, which was really cool. Yuma, Arizona, on the border of Mexico, where Arizona and California meet. Didn't go into it thinking it would be my dream assignment, but ended up being awesome. It was cool work-wise because the Marine Corps was consolidating a lot of aviation out there because it's the desert. You can fly pretty much every day. So all type model series that the Marine Corps is flying and testing were located out there. So that was cool. And also it was just a cool place to be. Sometimes you find these remote locations, and I don't know if your deployment to Iraq was like this, Paul, but sometimes you go to kind of these locations, and because you can't really go anywhere else, you're asking about the academy was kind of the same way. You end up getting really close with the people around you. So it actually ended up being an awesome assignment, right? So I did that until 2016, and then after that,
can we back up? What language did you learn when you were in the FA?
Vietnamese.
That makes a lot of sense based on what I know about you.
Yeah. Well, that was a feed-in, yeah. I got selected for Vietnamese, and then that just led to more assignments with Vietnam.
Was that a hard language to learn?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it like any other language that I might be more familiar with?
So some of the roots of the language have Sino roots. So some of the formalities, like the word for embassy, Dai Su Quan in Vietnamese, is very similar in Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. But Vietnamese is a very tonal language. There's 6 tones, and it's mostly monosyllabic. So the word me can mean 6 different things, depending on if it's a low tone, high falling tone, broken tone. But then also there's a couple more things, right? Beyond just the learning in the schoolroom, the way that Vietnamese talk is very rhythmic, like one up, one down. And so it doesn't always matter so much what the word is. It's more of just kind of the common sayings and the flow of the conversation. It just takes a long time to learn to understand that. And the final part is no one really learns Vietnamese. Foreigners don't really learn Vietnamese, not in the way that people learn Chinese or Japanese or Korean. And so the locals' ears aren't tuned to someone butchering their language. So all of that combined, that was kind of a tough experience, but an awesome experience. It was a lot of fun.
6 tones. Is there any equivalent in English to the idea of tones?
No.
So it's another variation on the language you grew up speaking.
It absolutely. So that was one of the things I struggled with, Paul, is I tend to talk a bit monotone. I mumble when I talk. And when you're speaking a phonetic language like Vietnamese, it's all about the vowels. I mean, you have to, the word for flower is hoa, and it has to be like this, that you leave your mouth open, which we don't usually do in English, right? But if you don't do that, and in fact, 6 months through the language training program, one of my instructors gave me kind of a remedial one-on-one program the rest of the time. And what she wanted to do is just stop learning new vocab, because her mindset was it doesn't do you any good if you have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 word vocab if you don't say the words right in a culture where they're not used to listening to foreigners speak, you won't get anywhere. And so I really started focusing more on the common words I knew and just saying them correctly. Yeah.
And so when you went to Vietnam when you were an FAO, right?
Yeah.
And when you went over there and you had just, how long had you been studying Vietnamese before you went to Vietnam, trying to speak it with people from there?
So the first time I went, the first language program was here in DC for a year. Halfway through that, I went for a week for an immersion. So that was kind of my wake up call. Like, wow, I've been in a program for 6 months and I can't understand a single thing and nobody can understand me. So came back, finished that 6-month training program to focus more on pronunciation. And then after that, I lived there for a year, which got a lot better living there.
Yeah. By the end of the year, you probably felt really comfortable.
I feel comfortable speaking. Listening is still very, very hard for me. It's just my ear just isn't tuned the way it needs to be to listen to conversations. So a lot of my listening is conversational cues. But if I can speak at I don't know, if I can speak at like a 70% level, my listening is like a 10% level, whatever those numbers even mean.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with, I don't know, is there equivalent to nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs? Or
so the good thing about the Vietnamese language is it's more plug and play. So I do this, you do that, I go there. It's that part of it is pretty basic. So that's helpful. The grammar is pretty straightforward. The sentence flow, subject, verb, action, whatever it is. That's kind of similar to English. It's not like Korean where it's almost the inverse. And then also there's no characters, right? They have a like an English type alphabet, with some diacritic marks. But you could, within a month of studying Vietnamese, you could read every letter and pronounce it. You might not know what it means, but those things make it easier. So at that point, it's just the understanding of kind of the way that it's spoken that's a challenge.
Not understanding Vietnamese at all. Vietnamese speakers, people that are from Vietnam, the pace of their speaking sounds ridiculously fast.
Yeah, but I mean, I talk super fast, right? We talked about being a masshole from Boston. The Boston area, and I'm a drummer. Like, I think they would say the same thing about us coming back here, right? Especially if you were to come to the Northeast.
Okay. I interrupted you. You were talking about your duty assignment after Yuma.
Yeah. No, so Yuma was actually back out to Vietnam. So I was the Marine Corps attaché at the embassy for a couple of years, for 3 years. And then we were able to stay in Vietnam for 2 more years working the DPA mission. So DPA is the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. So looking for the missing in action from the war still. So 3 years at the embassy, 2 years doing DPA. So ended up being in Vietnam. I was there for the one study year years ago, and then the 5 years for the embassy and DPA assignments. And then summer 22, it was time to head back home. So I worked at the Pentagon for a year in headquarters Marine Corps doing international affairs coordination, and then retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I had talked before about the fact that your dad's a Vietnam vet. My dad's a Vietnam vet. Did you learn anything about because you got a chance to immerse yourself in all things Vietnam. Did you learn anything about your dad's experience over there because of your immersion? Because my dad didn't really talk about Vietnam until very recently.
Yeah, dad growing up never really talked about the bad parts of combat, and he saw some tough combat. We knew that he had experienced it because, when you wake up with nightmares, it's hard not to know. But even growing up, Paul, he the only things he talked about Vietnam were how much of a beautiful culture it was, and just how beautiful the people were, and just if in any country, if a force were to come into that country, it should be expected that the people in that country would fight back, right? So what I don't know, Paul. I don't know if it's so much I learned about his experiences there. I would say it was almost probably the opposite. That just his mindset really helped me understand some of these themes and understand how horrible war is, and how the effects of war, or the trauma of war, is intergenerational. Right? I would say 3 generations, Paul. I mean, the generation that suffers it, their kids, and then maybe the grandkids have a shot at a normal childhood, right? And so those themes, I'd say it's probably the opposite, Paul. That those themes probably made me more empathetic coming into the assignment, to just want to advance our American interests and our partnership with Vietnam, but at the same time know that underneath all of that, there was this trauma from war. That's just a reality, right? You can't wish it away. You can't ignore it. It's the reality,
Yeah. Um, DPA work, I mean, it's been almost 50 years since the hostilities ended there. But we still have MIA soldiers, right?
We do. Yep.
Do you think we'll ever account for everyone?
The mission is incredibly hard, Paul, and it gets harder every day. I think the mission goes on, and we do the best we can to find answers for the families. But the challenges are that there's a few of them, right? The challenges are, I mean, first of all, just environmental conditions. You know, it's not like in the Pacific Islands. There's some places where we actually still find full skeletons. In Vietnam, with the environmental conditions, sometimes you're lucky if you find a bone fragment. Unfortunately, with DNA analysis, you know, a bone sample the size of a pinky nail, nowadays they can make a positive analysis, but it's that hard with environmental conditions. The economic development, Paul, one of the sites, and they actually did find this pilot was actually from my old squadron, my squadron, VMFA 533. He went down high speed over a rice paddy 50 years ago, and they excavated that site multiple times. The problem is it was a rice paddy, so 2 or 3 times a year the villagers tilled every inch of that land. But then also with the economic development, they built a massive high voltage power line above it and sank these big concrete footings 30 feet down in the ground. And that's the reality. Just these areas are developing as they should, but that makes the mission a lot harder. And then also just information and memory, right? Like a lot of the most valuable information is from people's experience and their memories, and just that generation is aging very, very fast, right? So I think the mission continues, Paul. The DPA mission started with Vietnam War accounting, has actually expanded all the way back. Now my understanding is World War I. So I think the accounting mission goes on, but boy, it becomes incredibly hard with every day that passes.
I don't know how to ask this question without just kind of coming out and saying it. In your experience in DPA, the years you were there, what was the rate of accurately identifying folks? Was it like single digits, 5 a year, or was
it's single digits, Paul. You can go and look at the DPA website. So DPA still maintains. We've had this business model with Vietnam, and it's a good business model. It's a humanitarian business model. So what that means is that withstands the ups and downs of domestic politics on any side. And it even withstands COVID, where 4 times a year, a team from the U.S. comes in, works with a Vietnamese team and excavates. And that's after years of case research and investigation. But 4 times a year, we do these missions. And hopefully during those missions, something is found that indicates it may be, potential human remains. Sorry, Paul, my alarm's going off because I have to pick up my kids here shortly.
Oh, you're good.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry, Paul, I lost track of the time. Probably about 5 or 10 minutes. I got to go pick them up from school.
That was not a heavy metal reminder.
No, that was a standard Samsung. To answer your question, though, Paul, we do the missions 4 times a quarter still. DPA does the missions, but not every time is there a repatriation ceremony. And even if there's a repatriation ceremony at the end of that mission, not every time does that end up in a positive DNA sample or a match. So it's single digits.
Yeah, but the work continues, right? And the people that are doing it are completely into it and sincere about the mission, as they should be, because somebody's got to be. I can't imagine losing a family member halfway around the world and then not knowing what happened to them, where they may have been lost. And some of these folks may have been alive for a period of time when we lost contact with them, and then maybe died in another location.
It's tough, Paul. I've grown to understand it. I can't imagine ever going through it, but just after working with some of these families over the years, that you're absolutely right, Paul. Just the pain of not knowing for so many years is incredibly painful. And so I don't know. So the mission goes on, and the agency nobly does its best to keep advancing all of these cases. So.
With zero fanfare, with zero people cheering them on, they're just quietly doing really important work.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Last things, I know you got to go. Relations between Vietnam and the U.S. today, my impression is they're pretty good, but I don't have any real reason to say that. I'd love to hear your answer. No,
they are good, Paul. So it's funny. Back to our comments about our dads, right? But my dad used to say something super interesting that after 2 heavy combat tours, I mean, this guy spent 26 months of his life as a door gunner, just seeing some of the worst that humanity has to offer. And something he was saying to me as a very young boy is we always had more in common than we ever had different with the Vietnamese, just who we are as human beings, how we see the world, how we want to raise our kids, what kind of a world we want our kids to live in. And so there is that, Paul. And so a couple of things here, right? The DPA mission we just talked about, for 30 years, the Vietnamese have seen Americans go back in the real spirit of Americans, right? Go back and try to find our missing, right? Try to reconcile the past. For decades, we've worked with Vietnam on these legacy of war issues, dioxin cleanup, and disabilities. I'm very, very proud of a few years ago, we were able to start a program to help Vietnam with their missing, right? I mean, for us, there was just shy of 1,500 missing in Vietnam from the war. On their side, they had hundreds of thousands, if not a million, still missing from the war. And that's an incredibly important cultural point for them. In their culture, they truly believe that a spirit can't be properly interred until it's located, properly identified and buried. And so the cooperation from all of these decades has really shown beyond war who we really are as human beings, right? So what that means, Paul, is pro-U.S. favorability in Vietnam has hovered over 90% for more than a decade. Just quite literally, more Vietnamese by percentage like Americans than Americans like Americans. It's absolutely incredible. So incredible partnership economically. Yeah, right. It's deep, Paul. It's very, very real. Just a lot of Americans still go back to Vietnam expecting awkward moments or expecting animosity, and there's zero. Just I'll never understand how a culture, and not just from America, I'll never understand how a culture can be invaded from every direction from 1,000 years and still be so open to every country coming in and just wanting to engage positively and welcome to engage. It's a pretty incredible culture.
Do you have time to talk about your family real quickly?
Yeah. I got probably 3 or 4 more minutes, Paul.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me about your family.
Yeah. So married to a Vietnamese woman. My wife, I met Annie. Annie was born in Saigon, as it was called then, and then came to the U.S. as a baby back in the 80s. So American of Vietnamese ethnicity. But I met Annie when I was studying Vietnamese. Tried to throw a little game at her in my school Vietnamese, which didn't go very well. But we got married. We have 4 kids together, ages 5, 10, 25, and 28, which is awesome.
That's good time. Quite the spread there, Chuck.
Got a little spread there. Yep. I don't know. We settled in the Virginia area here. My family's from the Northeast. Got a total of 9 brothers and sisters.
What number are you?
Irish family. I'm what am I, number 7? I'm number 7.
I guess when you're number 7, you don't remember that.
No.
Top one.
No.
Oh, I have a lot of questions to ask, but we won't do it here.
Yeah.
About your Irish upbringing. I wish I'd known that at the beginning. I should see. I didn't ask the right questions.
That's all. You asked a lot of great questions, Paul. This is a lot of fun. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you doing this, Chuck. And hopefully we'll stay in touch. And I'll say it for the 3rd or 4th time. I'd love to help you, Jeremy and John, with your nonprofit mission. Oh, name of the nonprofit?
Yeah, the Longest Climb Foundation. It's a reference to the soldiers who didn't make it up to the top of Hamburger Hill during the battle, and our effort to help veterans go back and achieve the reconciliation and the peace that they weren't able to find during the battle or the decades after. The Longest Climb Foundation. And
you guys have a website or
it's in the process. Everything right now in the process of building, Paul, but website LLC established. So, yep.
Love it. All right, Chuck, I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.